networks of cultural issues and important people in the country. And it was his awareness that his own generation had that need for knowledge to make themselves more effective as leaders that made him want to direct some of his philanthropy in the field of education towards the creation of a new field of global leaders who would start their careers with that kind of awareness of China and with relationships in China. The other source of inspiration for Steve Schwarzman in the creation of the program was the Rhodes Fellowship. He was very aware of the fact that the Rhodes Fellowship had provided generations of very talented young people with an important educational opportunity at Oxford University early in their careers, but also very importantly, that the Rhodes Fellowship had built a global network of leaders who could support each other and call on each other for advice and connections throughout their careers. And it was really those two streams that came together, his awareness of the need for a new generation of leaders to understand China and the effectiveness of a global network of leaders through the Rhodes Fellowship that converged in the creation of Schwarzman Scholars. We'll go into a lot of detail on the program as we go through this presentation, but I want you to keep in mind that the long-term goal of Schwarzman Scholars is to build a global network of leaders in business, politics, and civil society who, through their awareness of China, are more powerful leaders, and through their connections with each other are more powerful leaders. What we'll cover today is a big picture overview of what we think your experience will be like as a Schwarzman Scholar. We'll talk about the campus at Tsinghua University and the building that's being constructed to house Schwarzman Scholars. We'll cover the academic side of the one-year master's degree that's the anchor of the program. And then, of course, we'll talk about the admissions process. All Schwarzman Scholars will, of course, be heavily influenced by the year that they spend in Beijing. And we really want Schwarzman Scholars to have the opportunity to experience both the traditions of an ancient capital city like Beijing and the transformation that's happening to the city that really is a case study of the urban transformation that's shaping China as a whole. We'll have a number of activities, academic and non-academic, to help ensure that Schwarzman Scholars get to understand China outside of Beijing. Beijing, of course, is important to understanding the country, but the rest of the country is actually very different from the capital city. So we'll have a number of things that pull Schwarzman Scholars away from Tsinghua University and away from Beijing to deepen their learning. The core part of your experience, though, on a daily basis and on a week-to-week basis will be Tsinghua University. There are a number of reasons that Tsinghua University is an ideal partner for Schwarzman Scholars, and I'll spend a little bit of time talking about that to help you understand. Tsinghua was created more than 100 years ago to help build relationships between China and the rest of the world. And that mission at the university of deepening connections between China and the rest of the world really matches up nicely with the Schwarzman Scholars mission. In addition, Tsinghua, as one of the top universities in the country, also has a long tradition of building leaders for China. And you may know that the names Xi Jinping and Hu Jintao, of course. They're alumni of Tsinghua University who've held important leadership positions in the country. But if you look throughout the leadership of China, and beyond Beijing even, you'll find Tsinghua alumni in important positions and influential positions around the country. So it's that match of building links between China and the rest of the world and developing leaders that made Tsinghua an ideal place to host Schwarzman Scholars. Peter, would you like to say a little bit about Schwarzman College?
Yes, thank you, Rob. And what we're looking at right now is an architectural design of Schwarzman College. Schwarzman College is currently being built, but it's the site where Schwarzman Scholars will live and also take their core courses. Schwarzman College is designed to inspire you. It's designed to give Schwarzman Scholars a very particular experience, but also connect to the larger community of Tsinghua University, to the larger community of Beijing, and to the larger community of China. The Schwarzman College is located within walking or biking distance between the other faculties of Tsinghua University, including economics and business, international relations, and public policy. So while, again, we want to give a very singular experience to Schwarzman Scholars, we also want you to connect to the larger community. Schwarzman College was designed by Robert A.M. Stern of the Yale School of Architecture, and it is, in fact, a state-of-the-art campus. When it's completed, it will have the distinction of having LEED Gold certification as well as China Green Level 2 building certification. Other features of the building will include state-of-the-art air and water filtration systems. And Rob will cover the academics of the program.
The one-year master's degree awarded by Tsinghua University is the anchor of the 12 months that Schwarzman Scholars will spend in Beijing. So I'll take a little bit of time now to talk about the various components of that master's degree program. The year begins with an orientation, and the orientation serves a number of different purposes. First, and very importantly, the orientation is about helping Schwarzman Scholars get to know each other so that they can really start building that cohort. The cohort is an essential part of the long-term vision of the program, and a number of activities will be structured in orientation to really start bringing you together as a group. Another important part of orientation, and actually where you'll invest a lot of your time at that part of the year, is Mandarin instruction. And I'll say a little bit about that, but not just to explain orientation to you, but also to help you think about the kind of cohort that we're going to bring together in the program. Mandarin will be offered during orientation and on through the year at both the very beginning level for people who've never studied Mandarin before, all the way through advanced levels for people who've already mastered the language and just need to improve their conversation or writing skills. And the reason that we're offering such a wide range of Mandarin instruction from the very beginning of the program is that we actually want Schwarzman Scholars to be a cohort of people who are leaders in many different fields. Some Schwarzman Scholars will very definitely be experts on China and will come into the program with lots of Mandarin skills already under their belt. 20% of the students in Schwarzman Scholars, in fact, will be from mainland China and obviously won't need any Mandarin instruction at all. But we also want to bring into Schwarzman Scholars that student who aspires to be a leader in global health, the student who wants to be a leader in global finance, a student who wants to be a leader in global diplomacy. And some of those students may not have yet invested time in learning Mandarin, but we very definitely want them in the long run to be part of this cohort. So that's why we'll dedicate so much time during orientation, and then also more time during the program as a whole to ensuring that we can meet people's Mandarin learning needs no matter where they are. The core curriculum for Schwarzman Scholars is being designed in a way that bridges the academic world and the world of professional practice. And in all of the courses that I'm about to talk about, I would like you to be aware of the fact that they bridge both of those, even though I'm not necessarily going to repeat that as I describe all of the classes. The other bridge that the curriculum builds is between China and the rest of the world. This curriculum is being co-designed by faculty from Tsinghua University and faculty from around the world. And what they're doing is working together to create a new curriculum that's different from what's been offered either in the past at Tsinghua or in the past at Harvard or Yale or Princeton or Stanford or Oxford or the many people who are helping to design the curriculum. Another theme through all of the courses that I'll discuss in the core curriculum is leadership. Schwarzman Scholars is a program that's designed to help build on your leadership potential. And that theme is actually part of the way that we're thinking about all of the classes, but certainly is a part of one of the classes of the core curriculum which focuses on leadership. That course is being designed by 2 faculty members from Harvard's Business School and a faculty member from Tsinghua School of Economics and Management, which is Tsinghua's business school. And what they're doing is taking their curricula, which focused in on training professionals in the field of business, and first pulling it all apart and then putting it back together again with much broader content so that this is a course on leadership for students from around the world, not just from the US or China, and for students from many different fields, from public, private, and nonprofit sectors. and we'll build a leadership course that's really tailored specifically for the cohort of leaders that we want to bring together in Schwarzman Scholars. So this course that I just described in leadership is one of the courses in the core curriculum. The other 4 courses in the core curriculum that I'd be glad to describe in more detail if anyone is interested in the Q&A session is a course on Chinese culture and history, a course on global issues and economics, a course on global issues and international relations, and a comparative course on politics and governance that has China at the center of the comparison, but really is a global look at politics and governance. In addition to doing that core curriculum that I just described, which really serves as an anchor for all Schwarzman Scholars in the program, you'll also have the opportunity to develop a concentration where you really pursue your own interests. The concentrations fall into 3 very broad areas of focus, and those are public policy, economics and business, and international studies. And each of those broad fields parallels one of our partner schools at Tsinghua University who are working with us on the concentration curriculum. But what you'll do within the concentration is actually work very closely with a faculty advisor to craft a set of courses that really meet your professional and academic goals. So the group of courses that you put together as a Schwarzman Scholar may actually be much more focused than these titles suggest. A student might, for example, sit with an advisor and say, I'm interested in environmental issues and I see a cluster of classes at the School of Public Policy and also over at the School of Economics and Management. Can I put them together this way so that I can study the environment in a broader way? And the advisor, of course, will say yes. So in the way that the core curriculum is very structured and ensures that everyone has the same experience, we want the concentration to be an opportunity for you to really curate a set of classes that meet your own interests. The classes that I've been describing are not only being co-designed by faculty from around the world, but they're also going to be delivered in a collaborative way. The anchor of the faculty in Schwarzman College are the faculty of Tsinghua University, of course. But we will also have a very active and fairly large program of visiting faculty who will come in from leading institutions around the world and help deliver the curriculum in a number of different ways. In some instances, your courses might be co-taught by a faculty member from Tsinghua and a faculty member from somewhere else in the world. You may have other classes that are taught individually by these faculty that I'm describing. But the goal here is to deliver a curriculum that is as diverse in terms of its perspectives as the group of scholars who we want to bring together. I'll now start describing a few things that are outside of the classroom that are meant to enrich your experience and in particular to help build on your capacity as potential leaders. We'll have a very dynamic program of speakers at the school. We'll take advantage of the fact that Beijing already draws in global leaders in politics, business, and civil society. And we'll also draw on the networks of our founder and our advisory council to bring in leaders for very small, intimate discussions with Schwarzman Scholars in the forum at Schwarzman College. Some will stay on either for meals or for coffee. But the idea is to give you much more direct and personal interaction with these global leaders than you might typically have at a large university where someone of that profile would typically be in a very large auditorium and distant from the student audience. We'll also design for you an internship program that ensures that you'll have substantive interaction with employers in Beijing. The goal for us in doing this internship program is to help build out your networks in the city, to help build out your professional skills in your field, and to ensure that you spend time away from the campus and really experience the professional world in Beijing in a more direct way. Internships, I'm sure, are familiar to many of you who are on this webinar. One thing that's a little bit different about the way that we're approaching the internship program is that we will actually prepare internships for Schwarzman Scholars in advance of your arrival, so that when you arrive, there will be a menu of options for internships, and then we'll match Schwarzman Scholars to those internship opportunities. We're doing that really for 2 reasons. Partly as a recognition that some Schwarzman Scholars won't have the Mandarin language skills to be able to start working on an internship search immediately when they arrive. And we also recognize that in a 12-month period, that's a fairly fast time frame in terms of building networks and understanding the landscape to identify and secure an internship. So we'll curate this list of opportunities for you, and if you want to take advantage of them, you're very welcome. If you are an incoming student who already has professional connections in Beijing and or already has strong Mandarin skills, and you find an internship on your own that is more interesting for you and more appropriate to your career goals, you're certainly very welcome to pursue that on your own. But if you like the idea of this safety net of an internship program that's been arranged for you by Schwarzman Scholars, then you're very welcome to take advantage of that. In a similar way, to ensure that you really deepen your networks in China while you're a Schwarzman Scholar, we'll cultivate for you a group of very senior mentors. These mentors will take Schwarzman Scholars on a one-on-one or one-on-two basis and will be part of your experience over the course of the year. They'll advise you individually, they'll connect you to others in the field, they'll help you understand the field that they work in. They'll have a similar matching process to what I described for the interns, so we'll look at your interests and then match you to a mentor in your field. This part of the program is optional, but I actually expect that most Schwarzman Scholars will be really excited about the opportunity of having a senior advisor in Beijing work with them over the course of the year. One of the other activities that we'll design for you to pull you away from the campus and to help deepen your knowledge of China as a whole is a set of study tours. We'll build these study tours much closer to your arrival, and we'll actually look at the interests and the profiles of each class as they come in to finalize what will be on offer in the coming year. But to give you a sense of what we're planning to do, we'll plan tours that go to a specific place and do a deep dive on a specific issue for a very small group of Schwarzman Scholars, say 10, 15, 20 people. The study tours will be things like, for example, and this is all fictional at this point because we won't design them until we know who's coming in the first cohort, but we'll design things like a study of environmental issues in Sichuan province, or a study of urbanization trends using Nanjing as a case study, or a study of industrial and manufacturing issues in Guangdong. And there'll be a rich array of options, and we'll have a similar matching process like I described for internships and mentorships to put people into the right program to match their interests. But this will be a great opportunity during the spring term of your year to really get away from Beijing, learn another part of the country, and do a real deep dive on a particular interest of yours. There'll be a number of support services that are provided within the walls of Schwarzman College only for Schwarzman Scholars. They typically have parallels that are also offered by the university, but to be sure that these are tailored in a way that's very appropriate to the population that we're bringing together, we will within the college have a career services office. We'll have academic support, tutors in your field who can help you with course selection and help you with your academic work, and health and wellness programs within the walls of the college. And then to the extent that your language abilities allow you to do so, you're of course very welcome to take advantage of the parallel resources that the university offers. Peter's now going to tell you a little bit about the scholarship itself and the admissions process.
Thanks, Rob. One of the features of the Schwarzman Scholars program is the comprehensive nature of the scholarship. The reasoning behind the scholarship, which is it is a fully funded program, is that we wanted to take financial constraints off the table as a consideration for applicants. We really want to find the next global leaders, and we don't want the finance piece to be a challenge for applicants. So the scholarship covers the items that you see here: tuition and fees, room and board, travel to and from Beijing, as well as the other items listed. But again, we wanted to make sure that any applicant, regardless of financial need, would be able to consider the program and apply, and take that financial constraint off the table as a barrier. On this screen, we show the application requirements, and these are pretty standard application requirements for a graduate program. The application process will be very competitive, but we designed it to be very streamlined. So these components of your application are very standard. You'll need to have completed an undergraduate degree. You'll need to write personal statements and essays specifically around your leadership capabilities. There will be a university assessment for students that are coming directly out of their undergraduate programs, where you'll work with either your fellowship advisor or another representative from your institution to complete this form. You'll have to submit a resume. There'll be 3 letters of recommendation required. You'll have to show English language proficiency. You'll have to be between 18 and 28 years of age. You can be any citizenship, and no Mandarin is required. So while we do provide Mandarin training, again, the program is taught in English. Prior experience in China or prior knowledge of Mandarin or different levels of Mandarin, they don't necessarily hurt or help you. But we do want to provide a foundation of at least some basic Mandarin for those who have no skill in Mandarin, or those who are mid-level, or those who are advanced level. We want to assist in that piece with the goal of connecting you as much as possible to China at large. Now, the first phase of the admissions process, which we just discussed, involved the online application. The second phase involves interviews. So we want to get a sense of who's a leader, both on paper, digitally on an online application, but also in person. So we're investing a lot in the interview process for the application. We will invite the finalists from the online application process to interview with us in person. We'll cover the cost of the travel for the interview, and we really want to see, how you as an individual applicant, how do you look as a leader, both in one process, the online application, as well as in person. How do you portray yourself and convey your leadership capabilities in an interview? That's something that we're really investing a lot in, because it's something that we view as very important in the selection process. Some key dates on the application and the admissions process. We will launch our application in April of 2015. The deadline to submit the online application will be October 1st, and the selection period will be November of 2015. The first class of Schwarzman Scholars will arrive in Beijing in late June and start classes in early July of 2016. And before Rob and I open the floor for Q&A, we wanted to share our social media and websites. So do please take note of our website. Feel free to follow us on Twitter and follow us on Facebook. But Rob and I are more than happy to answer any questions you have at this time. So please do chat your questions in to the chat functionality of the webinar.
So we actually already have a good number of questions on board, and I'll just kick everything off. There's one question that's come up that I think is really interesting, and that is, to what extent is Schwarzman Scholars integrated into the rest of the experience at Tsinghua University? And I think answering that will give you a really good sense of our ambitions for the program. We, on the one hand, want to build you as a very strong, tight-knit cohort. So there will be times in the experience and parts of Schwarzman College where it's only for Schwarzman Scholars. The core curriculum, for example, is only for Schwarzman Scholars. You'll do that together. There will only be Schwarzman Scholars in those classes. There will be some events that will only be for Schwarzman Scholars. For example, the study tours will be Schwarzman Scholars, and then some faculty from the program joining you on the study tours. On the other hand, very intentionally built into the program are other activities and courses and programs that really ensure that you interact with other students at Tsinghua University. So, for example, the concentration courses that you'll take, those courses, some will be in Schwarzman College, some will be in our partner schools like the School of Public Policy, the School of Economics and Management, and the Department of International Relations. But in those classes, you're going to mix in with other students from around Tsinghua University. If you speak Mandarin, you are also welcome to take classes around the university in Mandarin, and obviously at that point, you'll be interacting with students from Tsinghua University. There are language exchange programs, so that you can do a language exchange with someone who maybe wants to learn German from you and you want to learn Chinese from her. The university already manages that. It's a very successful program at Tsinghua in promoting student interaction, and will encourage Schwarzman Scholars, even though there will be great international diversity within the college. If what you want to do is a language swap, we want you to do that through the university's program. We're also putting together lists of student groups where international students have successfully integrated in the past, and community volunteer opportunities where it's easy for an international student to join those community volunteer activities, to once again create more opportunities for Schwarzman Scholars to interact with Tsinghua students beyond the formal parts of the curriculum that I described earlier. So both of those elements, building you as your own cohort and ensuring that you interact with other students at Tsinghua University, are equally important goals for us.
So we had one question about reviewing the key dates, and we'll just go back a slide so that you see those, and then we'll proceed to answer other questions. So the key dates are back on the screen. Take note of these dates, and we'll go through other questions. We got another question about may applicants be married? You obviously can be married, but because of the nature of the program, we won't be able to provide financial support for the spouse, and Schwarzman Scholars are expected to live on Schwarzman campus, and unfortunately we won't be able to provide housing for a spouse.
Lots of great questions coming in, and we actually have plenty of time to answer them, so we'll just keep going through the lists until we have answered everyone, and hope that everyone can hang on with us until we get everything covered. There's another sort of broad, high-level question that I'd like to take about the application. Just simply asks, what does a strong application look like? And I'll answer that by saying that there are fundamentally two elements in the application that are equally important to us. One is your academic strength, and the second is what we see as your potential to be a future leader. And we realize that both of those are complicated in their assessment, so I'll take a little bit of time to describe that. On the academic side of things, we want students who are in the top of their class. And we'll say, and I know that with people who are interested in applying, it can be sometimes frustrating because you want a hard and fast number, but we're not setting an actual number for that. So we're not going to say we want people who are in the top 10% of their class or the top 5% of their class. We actually want to see students who've been successful academically, but we're not going to draw a hard and fast line. And the reason for that is that the two elements work together. The academic side works with the leadership potential side. On the leadership question, what we're looking for is a set of personal characteristics that we feel are essential for someone to eventually become a future leader. And I'll go through those in some detail right now, and I'll say that there's one essay in the application where we'll ask you to describe these characteristics in a particular situation. The first of those characteristics is we're looking for people who have the capacity to anticipate how things are changing, either to see an opportunity that's emerging and then to act quickly to take advantage of that opportunity, or to see a trend that they feel needs to change and then really intervene to create change on that issue. But we want people who are forward thinking and have the capacity to act in a visionary kind of way. Second, and very important to that, is the ability to inspire others to join you in creating that kind of change. There's really not a lot of value in being a visionary if you're isolated and you keep your vision to yourself. So we think that it's really critical that future leaders demonstrate some sort of capacity to bring others on board, to inspire them, and to get a group of people to take advantage of an opportunity or to create change on an issue. And the third element of leadership that we will look for, that we think is really essential, is character. We're going to want to understand what your internal value system is and how you use those values both to energize yourself and to demonstrate the determination that it needs to create change on complicated issues or in complicated institutions, and also how your values help you inspire others to join you in making change. So vision, inspiration, and values are those three elements of leadership that we're really going to look for in Schwarzman Scholars. Let me say a little bit about how we'll look for all of those elements. We'll look for academic strength primarily through your transcript of your undergraduate studies and letters of reference from faculty who are writing on your behalf. We'll assess your leadership primarily through one essay where you describe for us one instance where you've exercised those leadership qualities that we're looking for. We don't want this essay to be an abstract meditation on the qualities of leadership. We actually want it to be a specific and personal case study in the demonstration of those characteristics. So that's what we're looking for in a strong application, is that mix of academic and leadership qualities. The application itself is going to be developed in detail this winter and will be launched in April of next year. So you'll be able to look and see, what the actual essay question looks like in April next year, and then we'll do another series of webinars around the launch of the application to go into detail. But those principles that I just outlined are definite and will shape the way that the application forms themselves come together this winter.
So we do have a lot of questions, so I want to go through them somewhat succinctly, but also cover all the bases and try to answer them as fully as possible given our time. Do you need to pick a major when applying? Yes, you do. You will have to apply to a specific major, but as Rob described earlier, they're highly customized to what you actually want to do, and that will involve your student advisor when you get on campus. Question came in: do we have specific quotas for each concentration? We do not, but we do want a good balance of students, but we don't have a specific number in mind for any particular concentration. Someone asked a question about, do resumes need to be limited to one page? That is not the case. We are looking at global outreach, and in other cultures and other business cultures, the CV is more of the standard document, and that can be 3, 4, 5 pages. So resumes don't need to be one page at all. Don't worry about that. You don't have to make it fit on Word if that's a concern for you. Another question about what is the follow-up after the program? That depends, again, on the program that you design and what your goals are before you come into the program, as they develop throughout the program, and what you work on with your advisor after the program. So the follow-up will depend on a particular student. But Rob has something to add about that.
I want to jump in on that. So Peter was pointing to the follow-up, I think, meaning the career development issues on an individual basis. There's another dimension to follow up after the program, and that's the question of how we develop you as a network of Schwarzman Scholars. This program absolutely doesn't end when you leave Tsinghua University. The vision is very much a long-term vision. And even though we don't have alumni yet, obviously, we will have alumni by the summer of 2017. So we're very definitely already thinking about what we'll do to sustain and even strengthen that network over time. The vision for this program is going to require each cohort to stick together, but it's also going to require that the Schwarzman Scholars who graduate in 2017 get to know the Schwarzman Scholars who graduate in subsequent years. So we'll have global programming to help bring Schwarzman Scholars back together. That programming will be substantive and will be themed around important global issues. And then eventually, as the alumni population grows, both in numbers but also in terms of the professional work that they're doing, it will be Schwarzman Scholars who are driving that alumni programming, speaking at that alumni programming. So this program actually will continue very intensively after you graduate. I'll take a quick related question that's come in about the internships. The question is, are the internships short-term or long-term, and do they extend past education? The internships that we're going to arrange are for a semester in the spring of your year as a Schwarzman Scholar, and the internship will end at the end of the program. It actually is a part of the curriculum so that everyone is required to do the internship and also required to submit a capstone project that's linked to that internship. Now, we give you lots of flexibility in what the internship will be and how to choose it and how to curate your own. There even are some opportunities to do your internship in a more academic way within the university. But everyone will do an internship. Everyone's internship will end at the spring semester, and they'll turn in their capstone project. Now, if an employer wants to keep you on, and can make visa arrangements for you to stay in China and work, that's between you and the employer, and that certainly would be a fantastic outcome. But our commitment to our students and the part that's built into the program is for a semester-long internship in the spring.
So we have some questions about application materials. One question came in regarding undergraduate degrees. So we do require undergraduate degrees to be completed by the time of enrollment. However, we're not looking at any specific undergraduate fields of study. So you can come from any background. We just want that, the program to resonate with you as a master's degree, as we've been describing it. So your background does not need to, you don't have to come from a specific background. We recognize that leadership can come in many different academic fields and professional fields. Graduate students are welcome to apply. As long as you fit within the 18 and 28 year age range, you're welcome to apply. Some applicants will already have graduate experience. Some applicants will have some work experience. We don't have hard and fast requirements for a number of years of work experience. You don't have to have a graduate degree, but you can, as long as you fit within that age range. A question did come up about leaving a graduate degree while in progress. The program, Schwarzman Scholars program, doesn't have an issue with that. That might cause a problem with the particular graduate program that an applicant would be leaving to join Schwarzman Scholars. So that would be something that an applicant would have to deal with on his or her own end with the current program, but that is not an issue for the Schwarzman Scholars program.
There are a couple of questions that overlap with each other about the targets for applications, the nationality of applicants. So I think we've hit on pieces of that, but let me just do that in a unified way right now. For the first year, meaning the class that will start in the summer of 2016, we're looking to bring in 100 students. Those 100 students will be proportioned fairly tightly along the following lines: from China 20%, from the US 45%, and from the rest of the world 35%. Those determinations will be made based on the passport that the applicant carries. So it's not about where you studied or where you live currently. It's about your nationality, and that's determined by your passport. Within each of those groups, we're not managing to any micro targets. So unlike some other fellowship programs within China, within the United States, we don't have state or provincial targets. And in the 35% for the rest of the world, we don't have national targets. Now that said, we want diversity. So we will look to put together a group of students who are mixed in terms of the schools that they've studied in and the parts of the region that they come from, but we're not managing to specific target numbers in doing that. There have been a couple of other questions about target numbers on other issues, and I'll just say that on all of these other issues, whether it's the field that you're planning to study with Schwarzman Scholars, whether it's the undergraduate major that you had, we are looking to build a very mixed class. So we're not aiming for any particular percentage on any of those other measures, but we will always, in all cases, try to put together a very diverse group of students in the program, because we feel like the learning environment for you is going to be much stronger if there are many different kinds of Schwarzman Scholars in the mix. There's one other question about dual citizenship. If you have dual citizenship, we'll have an opportunity for you to tell us that on the application. It's not really going to affect the way that we evaluate your application, of course, but what it does is it just gives us more options when we get to the end of the process and we're looking how to balance the class. If we can say, oh, we could count this person as either UK or US, it just makes our decision making easier, but it's not really an essential factor in how you're evaluated as a candidate. Once again, the key elements when you're evaluated as a candidate are your academic strength and your leadership potential, not all of these other factors and percentages that we're talking about.
So we have some more questions regarding application. So deferring, what is our deferral process? We will have a deferral process, but if you as an applicant know that you're not able to join us for the cohort that you're applying to, we would ask that you hold on your application. The deferral process is more for applicants who have a surprise, that find out something last minute that they're not able to join, and we'll deal with that on a case-by-case basis. But if you do know that you're not able to join the program for the year that you apply for, we ask that you not apply for that year and hold off your application until later. Another question regarding what kinds of letters of recommendation. We're looking for an academic letter of recommendation that will speak to your academic strength. We're also looking for a professional letter of recommendation, and then a third letter from any non-relative that can speak to your leadership capabilities as well. Another question regarding the institutional assessment. Applicants who are currently in their undergraduate programs will be asked to include an institutional assessment from your institution. You won't necessarily need to be nominated per se, as there are other fellowship programs where there's a nomination process. The institutional assessment process for the Schwarzman Scholars application is very streamlined, very streamlined. So that's part of the application, but it's nothing to worry about. It's something that you would work with your institution on.
The way that I describe the assessment form that we're going to use for Schwarzman Scholars is that it's meant to help information flow between the university and our selection committee, but our assessment form isn't meant to be a gatekeeper. So this assessment form and your university's process for completing the assessment form will not be a barrier to entry for you. It's just to help us know more about you as a candidate. There are a couple of overlapping questions that I'll take right now. One is about academic freedom and in particular internet freedom in this program. And then another question about whether we welcome students who are interested in social justice issues to apply. And those really both fit, from my point of view, into the same question. So please type a question in again if I don't answer what you specifically wanted to know. The university and the country's political leadership have assured us that Schwarzman College will have full academic freedom within the walls of the college. And that's always worded, quite directly, saying within the walls of the college, we can read, teach, study, discuss whatever we want to do. I don't think that academic freedom privilege will necessarily travel with you. So we are also advising Schwarzman Scholars to be aware that, as is the case with any study abroad program, you're subject to the laws of the country in which you live. But within the school, within our courses, within our discussions and our programming, there'll be full academic freedom. You'll have access to what you need on the internet to do your coursework. And those reassurances have held as we've made a number of very practical decisions in the implementation of the program. Decisions about information technology, decisions about hiring faculty. All of this seems to continue to be reinforced every step we take with implementing the program. On the specific question of a student working on a social justice issue, we're open and in fact very actively looking to put together a group of students working on a wide range of issues. What we want are people who are going to be leaders and who are interested in making the world, the phrase that gets used quite frequently is a more peaceful and prosperous place. So a student working on a social justice issue who can articulate a reason that being in Schwarzman Scholars for the year will actually make him or her into a stronger leader in that field would actually be a very strong candidate. There's another question that I can answer very quickly. How will we work with the military? We've had, speaking only within the US context, we've had conversations with West Point and with the Air Force Academy, and we'll be meeting with the Naval Academy in the spring. And what they've said so far is very supportive. West Point has already said very definitively that West Point grad who's been accepted as a Schwarzman Scholar would be allowed to take the year to go do Schwarzman Scholars. It doesn't reduce your service obligation, but it's a fully accepted reason to postpone your service obligation. I would expect that the Naval Academy will say the same thing, but obviously we can't guarantee that until we've had those conversations with them. There's a great question that came in. Will the building actually be completed in time? I love that question. The building is being completed at a really remarkable pace. The roof is on the building right now. The masonry walls are going up literally right now as we speak. The target date for completion of the building is summer of 2015, and the first Schwarzman Scholars will arrive late in June of 2016. So our target date is a year in advance of your arrival as Schwarzman Scholars, and everything is moving along at pace. In fact, if you know anything about building construction, it's those earlier stages that are more complicated and can really slow things down. And at this point, it's really just about finishing it out.
So we have some more questions regarding, do we welcome volunteers working abroad to apply? Absolutely. The program is open to applicants of all nationalities and all citizenships. We have a question regarding, we're just going through the questions. If you've already graduated, so if you're an alum of your undergraduate institution, do you need an institutional assessment? That's not necessary, as Rob mentioned. That form is not meant to be a barrier. It's meant to enhance an application. But if it's not something that you can provide as an alumnus, that it's not a requirement. Applicants can apply at large.
So many great questions coming in. A question of whether the program is open to LGBT identified folks. Absolutely no question and no concerns on that front. A question asking if the program is open to someone who has openly spoken out against the Chinese government. Absolutely open to application and to admission. The only hesitation you'll hear in my voice is that we can't order the Chinese government to give anyone a visa to enter the country. So if your public speaking against the Chinese government has reached such a level that the Chinese government might not issue you a student visa, that certainly is beyond our control, but it's not going to be a factor or a consideration in our admissions and selection process. Another great question about who the mentors might be, and some of you may have read in an article that came out just this week that Jack Ma has informally agreed to serve as a mentor. And he is the first person who has actually signed up this far in advance to serve as a mentor. We don't have other names that we can share, and actually I'm advising my colleagues in the program to not really broadcast the names of the mentors, because we want to match you to your mentors based on your professional interests and not on the celebrity factor of any particular mentor name. So my guess is that the way that the matching will be done is that you'll see a list of titles such as an executive in a technology firm based in Beijing, or an executive working in diplomacy in Beijing, or the head of a think tank based in Beijing, and you'll be asked to express your matching interests based on those titles rather than on the individual names, because I'm sure you can understand if we throw around a name like Jack Ma, or let's pretend that Barack Obama retires to Beijing after his presidency finishes, then we'll have everybody wanting to glom onto that one celebrity name rather than actually expressing their interests according to their fields. There's a question about housing and air quality, and Peter touched on this really briefly in his presentation, but the building is actually being constructed with very high quality air filtration system. Now, it's no secret to anyone who's on this call, I'm sure, that air quality in Beijing is bad. And we're aware that that's a concern for students. It's not something that we're being dismissive of. In fact, we're actually investing quite a lot of resources ensuring that the air quality inside the building is strong. Our advice is that many international students spend time in Beijing, do so successfully and do so without damage to their health. If you have personal health reasons that that's a special concern for you, you should get in touch with us. Let us know what your concerns are. We'll do our best to help you address them. We're addressing it inside the building, and then we can't control the air quality outside the building, but we will work with students on an individual basis to make sure that we can at least get you good advice and good health support if it's a special concern.
And then similar to what Rob was saying regarding air quality and health considerations around that, a question came up around dietary and religious restrictions. We want students to understand the value, and applicants to understand the value of the program. And this is a common theme with any kind of study abroad, any kind of internet education abroad, where it's difficult to live abroad when you're coming from a certain context and going into another. But we will work with applicants and students to provide a supportive environment, what is possible. So we would hope that any kind of personal considerations that you take into mind, the benefit of being in this program would outweigh any sort of drawbacks of any part of traveling and participating in education abroad. And we will try to be flexible, but we ask flexibility on the other side. Any pressing issues, though, we will work with applicants and then students when they've been admitted and enroll as a Schwarzman Scholar. Your student services are your go-to people who will help you with any issues that come up.
There's another question about undergraduate majors, and I'll answer this one because I think it's really helpful in terms of understanding the kinds of students that we want to bring together. And this one very specifically is whether an unusual undergraduate major is a disadvantage in the application system. And I think the question points specifically to chemistry as an undergraduate major. We're going to look to understand how being a Schwarzman Scholar and spending a year in this kind of program is going to help advance your professional interests. And I can think of lots of examples of what you might consider an atypical undergraduate major where there would be a fantastic connection. So imagine, someone has an undergraduate major in art history, and that person's professional ambition is to run a global art business, and writes an essay for us explaining that the Chinese art market is a major part of the global art market, will continue to be for a very long time, and spending a year in Schwarzman Scholars getting to know the Chinese art market and taking courses on entrepreneurship and business development will really help them advance their plans to build a global art business. I think that's a great story to tell. Similarly, if someone is from chemistry or maybe from environmental science, and they understand that China is increasingly a source of technological innovation in the world. There is, in fact, a faculty member in the School of Public Policy who works very specifically on the relationship between public policy, technology, and innovation. And that person from a science undergraduate background sees a personal and professional advantage in spending a year in China, understanding how the policy environment in China is either supporting or stifling certain kinds of scientific research and innovation. Another great story to tell. But the connecting factor there is, what's your personal story to tell about how Schwarzman Scholars is going to advance your leadership in a particular field? So certainly, I think all sorts of undergraduate majors could potentially have a compelling story to tell. And someone from maybe an IR or a poli-sci undergraduate major might not have that story or might not tell it in a compelling way. So I don't think any undergraduate major is by definition an automatic in or an automatic disadvantage.
So we have another question regarding alumni applicants. We aren't looking for a specific breakdown of student applicants coming directly out of their undergraduate degree versus students who have some work experience behind them. As long as you fit within the 18 to 28 year age range and have an undergraduate degree, you're able to apply.
There are a couple of questions that I'll take in quick succession. One was a request that we describe the core curriculum again. The core curriculum essentially consists of 5 courses. These 5 courses are very heavily stacked into the summer and fall semesters, so you'll complete this as a cohort with your scholars fairly early in the process of the year. Those 5 classes are a course on Chinese culture and history, and this course is one that I personally wish I could arrange my calendar so that I could go be in Beijing and sit through the whole class. It's one that's looking at cultural, historical, and philosophical trends over the course of China's long history, but examining them in ways that help explain and understand the way that decisions are made in China today. I think it's a fascinating course based on what I've seen so far. There are 2 courses that really parallel each other. They are global issues in economics and global issues in international relations. And those two courses are actually going to be taught by a series of professors who are specialists in each of those major issues in global economics and global IR. And they'll, of course, be coordinated by a single professor. The next class that I'll describe is a course on comparative politics and governance. And that class looks at governance issues, political issues and governance issues, but how governments make policy and implement policy. And it'll be done in a comparative way, so that China is always a point of comparison, but it's not a course studying governance in China. It's about global governance, global politics with China as the anchor point. And then the fifth and last of the core curriculum is the course on leadership that I described earlier. And that course will be a combination of examining literature on leadership, but also self-exploration exercises to really understand who you are and what your approach is to leadership. And that course, again, is going to reflect leadership perspectives from the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, and will also look at leadership from many different cultural angles. So that's the core curriculum. It's fairly concise in terms of a number of courses, but it'll be a fairly large part of your time commitment early in the program in the summer and the fall.
So I had another question regarding letters of recommendation, just to describe them further. So we're looking for 3 letters of recommendation. One should come from a faculty member from your most recent academic institution. Another should be from a supervisor, so that's more of a professional letter of recommendation. If you don't have that, specifically if you haven't worked at a particular job, there are other ways to get professional recommendations. Maybe you've done things on campus where, out extracurricularly, where you've worked as on campus or something like that. So we're, again, academic letter of recommendation, professional letter of recommendation, then a third letter of recommendation from any non-relative. The common theme of all the letters of recommendation will speak to your leadership capabilities and who you are, your strengths academically, but also your, the features of your leadership and who you are. Further discussion on all application materials can be found on our website, schwarzmanscholars.org, and we invite you to view those to get a more granular feel for exactly what's going to be part of the application. And then when we launch the application in April of 2015, there will be very specific, explicit directions about how to complete the application.
There's as best we can tell right now, another question has just come in. I was about to say we had one last question, and continue sending questions in if you're interested. The first one that we had pending in the queue was whether there are opportunities for travel. I described earlier the formal travel that's actually built in and part of the program, and those are the study tours. I won't repeat that unless you want me to. But the way that we're building the weekly schedule is so that your Fridays are always free. And we're doing that in part so that you're not over-programmed and you don't end the year completely exhausted, but also more importantly, we actually really want you to use those 3-day weekends to get away. So there is a stipend that's provided as part of the scholarship that will help you do that travel. We hope that the Chinese and non-Chinese students will build connections with each other and meet families and get away from Beijing and get to explore on that more personal and familial level, or if it's even just about going out in small groups and doing more tourist-oriented travel, that's certainly helpful and acceptable as well. But travel beyond the study tours is very definitely part of what we hope you do. And then there was another question about whether there's a limit on the courses and credits that you take. No, the limit is how you decide to manage your time, but we're not going to cap that. And what we really want students to do is to use Schwarzman Scholars to build the kind of experience that they think is going to be most effective for them in terms of their goals. So once you get through the core in the summer and the fall, you're suddenly going to find that there are all sorts of choices and options available to you. And some students will choose to use that extra time in the spring to really delve into some sort of professional experience, to expand their time in their internship or to take other sorts of professional opportunities on or volunteer opportunities. Other students may choose to use their time in the spring semester to go really deep on their Mandarin skills or to explore other courses around the university. We really want you working with your faculty advisors to curate the kind of experience that's going to be best for you.
Now we have some questions regarding the application. The application, and as you see the key dates, the application will launch in April of 2015, and we're looking at an October 1st, 2015 deadline. A question came about disadvantages to applying early. No, we just want you to use your time wisely and put forth the best application you possibly can within the deadline. And then another question.
Actually, can I just add a little bit to that? We will evaluate all candidates together as a cohort. So there will be regional committees that will look at all of the applications from that region and compare them with each other, and we can't do that until after the October 1st deadline.
And then another question regarding resources for applicants to strengthen their application. Just participating in this webinar is a resource for you to understand better about the program, and that in and of itself helps you wrap your mind around how you might paint a picture of yourself as a leader and a strong applicant for the program. Beyond that, the resources on our website, schwarzmanscholars.org, will outline the components of the application. And again, when the application launches in April of 2015, there'll be specific directions on how to complete the application. So my advice is to just follow those instructions.
And we will continue doing campus visits through the spring as well. So, and when we do campus visits, we encourage those host universities to open them to other students in the region. So keep your eyes on our website and look for those campus visits and the future webinars. And of course, the webinars closer to the launch of the application will be more focused on the mechanics of the application process. There's a question about how working professionals can convey what they feel like they can contribute to the program. Something we haven't talked about a lot yet, but is a part of the application, is the personal statement. And in the personal statement, we actually want that to be a broad essay about who you are, what your interests are, what you bring to Schwarzman Scholars, what you hope to take away from Schwarzman Scholars. It's almost the opposite of that leadership essay that I described, where I said, we want you to focus in on one very specific case study. With the personal statement, we want to get a very broad and long-term picture of who you are, what you bring, and what you hope to gain from the program. And I think that'll be your best chance to do that. And then, of course, if you're selected for the interviews, you'll have a very direct and personal opportunity to convey that.
We had another question regarding campus visits outside the U.S. Absolutely. IIE, the Institute of International Education, is working with the Schwarzman Scholars Program to do global outreach. So absolutely visits outside the U.S.
We're just going to pause for a second and see if any other questions come up. You know, we understand that at some point we've either exhausted you or exhausted your ability to generate questions, but we do just want to wait, see if anything else pops up, but if not, we'll wrap up fairly soon. Are there homestay options available? So the structure for the program is that every Schwarzman Scholar is expected to live in Schwarzman College. And that part is a fixed part of the program. You can't be a Schwarzman Scholar without living in the college. But what we really hope is that through your connections with other Tsinghua students and with certainly with the Chinese students in Schwarzman Scholars, that you get the opportunity to spend holidays and long weekends with families. But that will be something that will happen very naturally through your interactions with Chinese students at the university, rather than through something that we're structuring. Another question came in about another of the essays. There will essentially be 3 essays. One is the very broad personal statement that I mentioned. Second is the leadership essay. And then the third essay will ask you to really write in a detailed way about a policy issue that you're interested in. This is really our chance to understand your intellectual and professional interests, and our chance to really examine your academic abilities. And the personal essay obviously is about us understanding you as a person and understanding your professional goals. The leadership essay is really delving into that characteristic. And then remember, I said that academics are an important part of the consideration. And that third essay, where we ask you to analyze a specific topic, is going to give us more insights into what your interests are, but also an insight into your academic and analytical abilities. I'm sorry, let me just make sure I covered that. The topic of that essay could essentially be whatever it is that you're interested in. Another question just came in that said, is the program open to someone who's demonstrated no interest in China? The quick and easy answer to that is yes, but there's a much more complicated point of view on that. So someone who has dedicated her career to studying the Middle East and now says, I want to be a Schwarzman Scholar, but then articulates to us that the reason for that unusual combination of regional interests is that she's a United States citizen who's interested in diplomacy and recognizes that both China and the Middle East are going to be important for the United States diplomatically in the future. So if she's going to be a really successful diplomat, she feels she needs to understand both regions. That's a great example of someone who hasn't really done much on China yet, but has a really compelling story about why she needs to add China to the mix now. You could imagine someone who's maybe spent the entire career studying global finance and hasn't studied China yet, but tells us a story about how understanding China and China's role in the global economy is going to help them move more quickly through their field and their career in global finance. A great story to tell, but there has to be a connection like that. It can't just be, I want to do something different. But if you have that professional development story that helps us understand why your interests are now turning to China, you'll actually be a great candidate.
I've got another question regarding the case study on leadership, and I believe that's about the essay that we asked you to write. What we mean by case study is to give a concrete example of you as a leader, an example of something that you've done that demonstrates the qualities of leadership that we've been speaking about. We've got another question regarding public policy and education. Well, as you can see, the broad academic fields of the majors of the Schwarzman Scholars Master's Program can fit into many different fields. So absolutely, if you have an interest in ed policy, that's something that we're very interested in hearing about. So that there will definitely be an opportunity to customize the program to your academic and professional goals.
There's a question asking about reaching out to the faculty who are teaching in the program to get more detail on the courses. Certainly that's something that we'll build in the future. I think it's best if that's done in the spring when they'll be further along. We're the faculty, and the broad academic committees are right now that are designing the curriculum, is they have draft syllabi in place. They'll actually next year move into the mode of teaching the courses with students at Tsinghua University to get feedback on the courses from those students. But at this point, I feel like it's probably too early for us to put someone in touch with an individual faculty member to start quizzing them about a particular class because there's just not enough material on the table yet. But by the spring, we will start putting faculty bios and contact information up on our website and provide a lot more detail about who's teaching which class. And if you think it would be valuable to do so, we could even invite a faculty member to join a webinar and help answer questions in the webinar, but we'll also put people in touch on a one-on-one basis. Someone asked, what do I mean by the case study on leadership? And my reference to the case study on leadership is that essay on leadership that I've mentioned a couple of times. That essay about your personal experience with leadership. Someone is asking about the ratio of male and female applicants. So at this point, we don't have applicants, so I can't tell you what that ratio looks like. We aren't going to manage to a strict target in terms of those numbers, but we are going to look to have a diversity of male and female students. We've had a mix in the information sessions that we've done on campuses so far, so I'm hoping that that's going to be an equally strong mix in the applicant pool and then in the successful candidates. But right now there's no data that I can share with you, but we'll share that data very publicly once the first round of applications goes through.
We have a number of questions about application procedures. So a question about visual aids as part of the application materials. Everyone will have to submit essays. I've worked in higher education for almost 12 years, and I've seen many different kinds of application materials and essays. You will have to submit an essay, but if there are additional materials that you want to submit with your application, and you feel that it paints a strong picture of you as an applicant, we welcome them within reason. We won't be taking portfolios per se, but if there's a way for you to send us material as part of your application, we would consider it. But everyone will have to complete the essays for the application.
There are a couple of questions that we'll cover, and then maybe we'll wrap up within the next few minutes. But there are a couple of questions that are essentially about how an applicant handles a study abroad experience, or the fact that they're outside their home country or their home institution at the point that they apply. One of the questions says, can one of my recommendation letters come from that experience? Absolutely. We want the recommendation letters to come from the people who you feel know you best. And if that is a professor that you did a study abroad course with, then that's the professor that should write your letter. There's no question about that. The institutional assessment letter does need to come from whatever your home institution was, and that is only relevant for people who are currently undergraduates. But if you're an undergraduate at the University of Maryland, but you happen to be spending this year at the London School of Economics, your institutional assessment needs to come from the University of Maryland, where you spend most of your degree program. And then the last one, that's this sort of geographical question, is essentially about the interview. How do we handle the in-person interview for someone who's outside their home country? We will let you tell us which interview site makes the most sense for you. So if you're an American who is studying in India and you don't know where to do your interview, you'll be given the option of either coming to New York and doing your interview mostly with other US students, or of going to our Southeast Asia interview location to be determined to do that interview. We want that choice to really be made by the applicants based on what they think is best for them, whether it's better to be interviewed with people from your own culture and country, or better to be interviewed in the place that gives you the least jet lag.
Got another question, and this will be the last question that we take. Is it a bad thing if there's an overlap between social policy issues and the leadership essay? For example, if someone carried out that project on healthcare policy and is interested in collective action issues, so the interplay between leadership and policy, we just recommend that you complete the essays as directed. So if policy is part of your leadership, application, and it paints a good picture, what you've done in policy paints a good picture of yourself as a leader, and that's where the leadership essay, then by all means incorporate that into your essay. We're really looking for people that can paint a strong picture of themselves as a good fit for this program. And that can come in many different combinations of things.
We're going to wrap up now and let those of you who feel like you need to log out. But what we will do is go back very carefully through the transcript. And if we feel there's a question that we didn't cover, we'll get back to you within the next hour or so. And if you don't hear from us and you feel like you still have a question pending, or if you think of a new question that comes to mind anytime in the next days, weeks, please feel free to get in touch with us. You have our social media information on the screen right now. We'll share with you in the chat box the email address for posting questions, and we'll also organize more webinars like this in the spring. So in January, February, March, as we get closer to the launch of the application, we'll do more webinars to be sure that we can answer your questions. But once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your very thoughtful questions, and we look forward to hearing from you again by email, social media, or in the next webinar.